Before sunrise along the lower Nile, ca. 4000–3200 BC, scattered hamlets harness slow floods and rich silt, planting the seeds of Egypt's first enduring culture. Hunter-gatherer bands give way to settled farmers, their homes built from tall papyrus reeds and sun-baked mud brick. By the Gurzean period, pottery wheels spin elegant black-topped jars, while copper beads and flint tools are bartered in busy riverbank markets. Female figurines and painted ostrich eggs hint at complex beliefs, and single-chambered tombs mark social divides. Towards 3500 BC, village clusters coalesce into proto-chiefdoms, Abydos in the south, Buto and Mahdi to the north, each one tracing the Nile's magnetic pull. Shaped by capricious waters, these earliest Egyptians innovate in every season. Papyrus boats hug the banks, ferrying fishers and traders decked in leopard skins. Flax and barley harvests depend on predictably unpredictable inundations, and the people choreograph their annual rounds to the river's moods. Stone pallets, carved with proud hippos or falcons, suggest growing links between neighbors, both through trade and contest. By 3300 BC, obsidian from Ethiopia and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan reveal Egypt's distant reach, and the first experiments in hieroglyphs appear. Clan chiefs wear regalia crowned with animal standards, their tombs clustered tightly within sacred sand. Tensions simmer as populations concentrate and wealth accumulates. Sites like Nakata swell to several thousand inhabitants, with walled compounds for elite families. The dead are sent into the afterlife with amulets, painted vessels, and model cattle, portending the funerary rites of centuries to come. By around 3200 BC, competing chiefdoms begin to clash as the prize of the Nile Valley grows more precious. Armorers pound copper into maces, and the symbols of kingship, the crook and flail, emerge as tangible signs of power. The shadow of coming unification stretches across the floodplain. Skies over Egypt clear near the end of this age, ushering in an era where art, technology, and myth unite. Burial structures shift from pit graves to mastaba benches, showcasing early architectural ambition. The duality of Upper and Lower Egypt, two lands divided by geography, joined by destiny, becomes the crucible in which the Old Kingdom will form. The river narrows below Abydos, forcing all goods and travelers through a single bottleneck. Soon, a single line of kings will control it. Slowly, the first dynastic names, Scorpion, Ka, Narmer, etch themselves into living memory as Egypt stands on the edge of monumental change. In the muddy Delta Dawn, c. 3100 BC, Narmer stands poised to bind two lands with a single crown and a single stroke. The warlord king of Upper Egypt, Narmer unifies his southern homeland with the fertile, papyrus-choked marches of Lower Egypt, bringing centuries of rivalry to a close. The legendary scene survives in the Narmer Palette. The king, towering and aloof, lifts his mace over a kneeling foe, double crown shimmering with symbolic force. The palette, found among temple ruins at Hierakonpolis, fuses history and propaganda. Each chiseled tableau declaring smiting of the north and all Egypt bending to Narmer's will. To secure unity, Narmer does not only conquer. He launches vast administrative reforms, placing loyal kin and trusted officiants in command at Buto, Nekhen, and other key outposts. Dozens of reed-bound scrolls tally tribute, corn, linen, cattle, and every bundle is marked with the royal Serek, the forerunner of pharaonic cartouches. New government centers rise, packing hundreds of laborers and scribes in bustling workshops, and the slow drift of fragmented domains halts as the bureaucracy's net tightens. Shopkeepers, stonecutters, and potters know whose authority reigns when they pay their annual share in the fields. Unity must be performed, so Narmer orchestrates rituals on a grand scale. Each season, nobles gather at designated sites, perhaps Memphis or Thinis, to witness the king's renewed coronation, where the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt are joined as the Shent. These symbolic acts create a shared myth for a divided people, the king as Horus incarnate, guaranteeing order and harmony. Across each nome, priests awaken shrines adorned with Narmer's name, and messages ripple along the Nile in limestone slabs, all Egypt united beneath one divine hand, the eternal two lands. A pre-dawn hush settles over the newly united Nile c. 3050–2700 BC, as Egypt's pharaohs emerge not only as kings but as living gods among mortals. The people believe their ruler hosts a fragment of the divine Ka, an essence linking every pharaoh to the gods and to the eternal cycles of death and rebirth. This god-king is Horus on earth, charged not simply with ruling but with preserving Ma'at, the cosmic balance sustaining both humanity's harvests and the gods' favor. His orders are sacred law, his life, the state's beating heart. The instruments of divine rule develop in dazzling clarity. Carved on monuments like the Palermo stone, royal annals record not just reigns, but sacred deeds, canal digging, temple building, and ritual offerings to spirits and ancestors. Elite families jostle for proximity to the pharaoh, hoping to bask in his aura and attain secure tombs near his. Across festival grounds, scribes strike the king's name in stone. His official titulary is now fivefold, weaving his mortal birth with Ra's solar might. Kingship's divinity extends far beyond palaces. Cult temples mushroom along the Nile, maintained by ranks of priests and funded from vast royal estates. The king alone intercedes with the gods, but his cult must be continuously nourished by mortal hands. Scribes and artists render him eternally young, robed in white linen, arms outstretched in prayer or conquest. The pharaoh's image floods festival banners, pottery, even the humble bread mold, instructing all who see it that harmony rests, in every sense, on his unshakable authority. Ceremonial cults enfold birth, death, and all between. Living, the pharaoh ensures the sun rises and the grains ripen. In death, he becomes Osiris, ruler of the blessed West, to be worshipped for centuries in language and rite. These beliefs become the mortar for all that follows. Every stone in Egypt's future pyramids rests first on the idea of kings as living gods. Morning mists settle over Memphis, c. 2950 BC, as the city pulses with newfound energy at Egypt's crossroads. Founded, legend says, by Menes to bind north and south, Memphis rises where the rich Nile branches fan into the delta, clustering around a protective, white-walled enclosure called Ineb Hedge. Its strategic location makes it the nerve center for Egypt's administration, religion, and trade, a logical choice for the new capital. By early dynastic times, Memphis's population swells into the tens of thousands. Streets bustle with government scribes wielding reed pens, priests orchestrating festivals, and craftspeople shaping fine faience in crowded workshops. Granary complexes balloon in scale, holding back thousands of tons of wheat and barley to feed not only the locals but travelers and armies on the march. Palatial storerooms echo with the clatter of tally sticks and the chatter of bookkeepers logging tribute from distant nomes, ebony from Nubia, turquoise from Sinai, and fine linen spun in Lower Egypt. Life in Memphis is more than administration. On festival days, lavish processions wind through temple forecourts, golden barges float on canal waters, and the throaty chants of priests fill the air in honor of Ptah, the city's creator god. The city's cosmopolitan flavor grows as traders from the Levant, Libya, and Nubia crowd its wharves with fish, goats, and bronze artifacts, exchanging goods along dusty causeways that radiate from Memphis like spokes. Stonecutters and masons hone their skills in city workshops, preparing new building styles that will soon define Egypt's skyline. Memphis's design in art and architecture influences all later capitals. Courtyards with painted columns, bright with colored geometrics, house palm gardens, and private shrines for the city's most affluent. As the sun sets, lights flicker from countless oil lamps, and the city echoes with the soft rhythms of daily commerce settling into communal rest. From its busy embankments to its unseen storage vaults, Memphis emerges as the blueprint for all Egyptian capitals to come, a heartbeat city at the dawn of the Old Kingdom. The haze of dawn lifts over Saqqara, c. 2667 BC, as King Djoser ascends the throne and dares the impossible, to raise Egypt's stonework higher than any man before. Djoser entrusts the architect-priest Imhotep with his vision, a tomb like no other, built not from mud brick but from cut limestone, assembled block atop block in layered majesty. Under Imhotep's meticulous eye, the ground at Saqqara transforms. Workers clear 5 hectares, then lay out precise corridors, chapels, and courtyards, surrounding them with a looming stone wall nearly 10.5 meters high. Phase by phase, Imhotep innovates. First, his team erects a traditional mastaba, rectangular and flat. Then, in a stroke of brilliance, Imhotep orders it expanded upward and outward, forming the world's first step pyramid. 6 platforms rising over 60 meters tall. In its shadow, fine reliefs depict the Sed festival, where Djoser ritually recharges his kingship amid dancing priests and musicians. Each block, some weighing more than a ton, is quarried, hauled, and shaped with copper chisels. Masons invent new ramps and transport sledges to meet the evolving challenge. Saqqara's workshops hum day and night, their labor echoing across Egypt's two lands. Imhotep's design is more than a tomb. It is an architectural blueprint for eternity. To protect the king's body and soul, artisans carve underground galleries stretching nearly 6 kilometers, filled with over 40,000 stone vessels and precious offerings. Chapels crowd the complex, each adorned with delicate faience tiles, incense-burned altars, and sculpted wall scenes of the king's triumph. Security is tight. Deep shafts and secret passages deter grave robbers, while priests erect shrines to honor Djoser's memory in daily ceremony. The step pyramid silhouette soon dominates Egypt's horizon, signaling both technological leap and spiritual ambition. Imhotep's legacy is secured, and the cult of royal immortality finds its most daring monument. The transition from mud brick to stone forever alters Egyptian architecture, setting the standard for 3 centuries of pyramid building. Every pharaoh to come will measure his afterlife against Djoser's stairway to the gods, as Saqqara stands eternal in gold-lit dawn. The Giza Plateau glows at noon, c. 2580 BC, as a vast labor army moves in concert, and the age of the Great Pyramids begins under Khufu's iron-willed command. Khufu, second king of Dynasty IV, envisions a tomb that will dwarf Djoser's innovation, one that will dominate the landscape for millennia. Surveyors measure the site with palm fiber cords, establishing perfect squares, and soon after, crews flock from across Egypt. Military conscripts, skilled masons, and engineering overseers. With some 20,000 to 30,000 workers on site during peak seasons, the Giza complex rises block by block. The Great Pyramid's statistics astound. Over 2.3 million limestone blocks, averaging 2.5 tons each, are levered and slid into position. The 4 sides are aligned within 2 minutes of arc of true north, less than a hand's breadth off at the corners. A central core of locally quarried stone provides bulk. Shining Tura limestone clads the exterior, burning white under the relentless sun. At its completion, the structure stands a staggering 146.6 meters, 481 feet, tall, covering a base of 13.1 acres, by far the tallest and most massive artificial structure on the planet for over 3,800 years. The pyramid's purpose is far more than sepulchral. Its core passageways, oriented to cardinal points, reflect celestial beliefs, shafts angled to Orion and Sirius, guiding the king's soul to the stars. The vast enclosure hosts satellite tombs for queens, boat pits for the king's celestial journey, and subsidiary chapels for offerings. Built at extraordinary speed, possibly less than 27 years, Khufu's monument unites tens of thousands in common cause. State farms feed the labor force with 21,900 cattle a year. Workshops process copper chisels, stone pounders, and wooden sledges at industrial scale. Khufu's pyramid becomes the archetype for both spiritual ambition and hydraulic organization. The ramp system, debated by Egyptologists to this day, winds around the structure, staging levels as high as 80 meters before final capstones are set. Overseers inscribe short marks on blocks naming work gangs, friends of Khufu, drunkards of Menkaure. As Giza's dust settles, the Old Kingdom radiates confidence, its kings rivaling not just men but the gods they seek to join in luminous eternity. The dawn mists swirl above Giza, c. 2550 BC, as the colossal task of pyramid building transforms into a masterclass of labor, logistics, and brewing legend. Tens of thousands of workers, estimates range from 20,000 to 30,000 during height season, converge on the site, drawn by compulsory labor levies and state rations of bread, beer, and dried fish. Not slaves, but skilled and semi-skilled laborers, these men and women live in purpose-built villages south of the pyramid, their diet supplemented by 4,000 cattle and tens of thousands of goats annually. Excavations reveal bakeries producing batch after batch of coarse loaves, breweries turning out thousands of liters of beer every week. The machinery of pyramid construction is relentless. Quarrymen lever limestone blocks, some up to 15 tons, from the plateau bedrock using copper tools and pounding dolerite hammers. Engineers lay broad causeways, some over a kilometer long, linking quarries, the Nile, and the rising pyramids, their packed gravel flattened by hand rollers. Workers soak large wooden sledges and haul loads up ramps with ropes of plaited flax, lubricating the sand with water for easier movement. Archaeologists have recovered logbooks like Mirror's diary, chronicling daily shipments, an average of 40 blocks ferried from Tura Quay to Giza by canal in a single day. Housing the laborers requires massive logistical support. The workers' city sprawls over 20 hectares with dormitories, ovens, assembly halls, and even administrative offices. Medical papyri detail bone splints and wound care. Evidence of arthritis and injuries in skeletons reveals the toll of the work and the earthy humanity of the project. Overseers, marked by red ochre on their cheeks, organize the workforce into rotating crews, setting quotas and rewards for progress. Gang marks, daubed in hieratic script inside passageways, immortalize teams like the robust Friends of Khufu. Over the decades, stories bloom alongside stone. Greco-Roman travelers spin tales of slaves and sorcery, while Egyptians themselves see these mighty efforts as communal acts of devotion, forever binding the pharaoh's fate to that of the kingdom. On festival days, priests dedicate offerings for those who labor, ensuring their spirits endure with the eternal stone. As the sun crosses Giza's peak, legend and labor become one, setting a mythic gold standard for all ages to come. Early morning at Saqqara, c. 2540 BC, priests and artisans assemble around massive pits as the burial cult comes alive with solar boats and funerary rituals. Near every pyramid, deep trenches hold the wooden hulls of full-sized ships, some stretching over 43 meters, disassembled and buried piece by piece beside the king's tomb. The Khufu ship, discovered in 1954 sealed beneath 41 slabs of limestone, contains more than 1,200 individual wooden parts and is meticulously reconstructed over decades. Its cedar and sycamore planks fit together with cunning mortise and tenon joints. Solar boats symbolize the king's celestial journey. In life he is Horus, but in death he must ride with Ra, ferrying through the sky and battling the forces of chaos. Priests chant from rolls of sacred text, precursors to the pyramid texts, invoking protective gods and beseeching the sun's favor. The preparation for burial is sensory and sacred. Perfumes made from frankincense, linens woven from finest flax, and the soft papyrus mats cushioning the pharaoh's head. Chosen animals, cattle, birds, and occasionally favorite pets, are mummified and entombed alongside their master. The funerary cult envelops hundreds of staff, priests maintaining offerings daily, craftspeople fashioning golden canopic chests and alabaster vessels, and cooks feeding the teams from temple kitchens. State storehouses, some spanning 300 meters, are stocked with wheat, honey, and incense, meant to sustain both priests and the king's spirit through eternity. Offerings are tallied in painted reliefs, rows of geese, baskets of figs, jugs brimming with beer, stitched into ritual calendars. Every act is timed with the stars, anchoring both king and cosmos to a cycle of divine regeneration. Every detail of the king's burial reinforces Egypt's greatest aspiration, to keep the sovereign alive forever in glory and order. The solar boat, sealed and invisible to the living, waits silently to ferry the pharaoh's soul at dawn, when the sky glows gold and the desert wind stirs the stone causeways. The Old Kingdom's ritual heart beats in these moments, marrying labor, devotion, and cosmic destiny just beyond the Saqqara sands. Under the harsh midday sun, c. 2550 BC, the Sphinx emerges from raw limestone as sculptors carve the body of a crouching lion and crown it with the face of a king. Standing some 20 meters tall and 73 meters long, the Great Sphinx of Giza becomes both guardian and riddle, a sentinel at the heart of the pyramid field. Scholars still debate its precise origins, but most assign it to Khafre, builder of the second pyramid, carved directly from the bedrock ridge between causeway and funerary temple. With weathered paws stretched toward the Nile, the Sphinx oversees the royal necropolis as laborers shape its enigmatic smile and smooth the long headdress in the likeness of Khafre's features. Excavation pits fill with limestone detritus, more than 1,500 cubic meters of waste removed to free the lion's massive form. Blocks quarried from the Sphinx ditch are carted up the plateau, reused in the adjacent pyramid temples, linking the statue to its sacred landscape. Bright pigments, red for the face, blue for the beard, yellow for the headdress, adorn its surface, painted by skilled artisans whose traces linger millennia later. Rituals and legends are born in the Sphinx's shadow. Priests sweep incense around its feet at sunrise, invoking it as a kingly gatekeeper to the realm of the dead. Years later, pharaohs like Thutmose IV claim the Sphinx's voice bestows divine legitimacy in dreams. Inscriptions recorded between its paws proclaim the pharaoh's role as Ra's chosen, fusing solar worship with terrestrial rule. Across the kingdom, the Sphinx's stare becomes a symbol of royal mystery, its silent riddle guarding the transition from desert to the fertile river valley. As the centuries pass, sands begin to swallow the Sphinx to its shoulders, but its monumental presence, part lion, part king, all enigma, persists. The statue's gaze still fixes on the horizon where sky splits earth, capturing both the majesty and enduring questions of the Old Kingdom's greatest era. At dusk, as the shadow of its tall brow stretches across the plateau, the Sphinx remains a timeless sentinel, watching the pageant of Egypt's living and dead. Dawn lights the Giza Plateau, c. 2530–2510 BC, as Khafra and Menkore raise their pyramids beside the towering tomb of Khufu, structures smaller in scale, yet equally remarkable in their refinement. Khafra's pyramid, standing 143.5 meters at its completion, is edged with steeper angles and preserves more of its original white Tura limestone casing, dazzling the valley when sunlight strikes its crown. Its mortuary temple, one of Egypt's earliest examples using massive limestone and granite blocks, stands at the pyramid's base, connected by a grand causeway to the enigmatic Sphinx. Menkare's pyramid, third and smallest at Giza, rises to 65.5 meters, its core blocks hewn from coarser stone, but the burial chamber lined with powerful red granite shipped 935 kilometers from distant Aswan. Flanking the pyramid, three diminutive queen's pyramids cluster in perfect order, a visible sign of royal lineage and evolving funerary custom. Inside, reliefs and statues echo Menkare's youthful face and athletic build, blending human individuality with timeless divine ideal. Archaeologists uncover exquisite alabaster and schist triads, the king flanked by goddesses Hathor and gnome personifications, testament to the period's religious finesse. The logistics of building these structures remain daunting. Stoneworkers and engineers sculpt, fit, and haul millions of blocks with disciplined coordination, finishing Menkare's core and casing before his untimely death forces a hurried completion by successors. Khafra's complex includes enormous storage rooms and workshops for priests, plus boat pits and statuary courts for mortuary processions. Construction debris fills the air, while ramp systems evolve, becoming shorter and more efficient as masons refine their techniques over successive generations. Papyri record the thronging movement of granite lintels, cedar beams, and white-painted burial gear into the crypts, hundreds of workmen laboring under the gaze of the gods. Though smaller, these later pyramids embody the crystallized artistry and organization of the Old Kingdom at its zenith. Their temples teem with offerings, rituals, and sacred possessions, ensuring that Khafra, Menkare, and their queens travel with certainty into the afterlife. Together, these monuments at Giza transform the plateau into a necropolis unmatched elsewhere, a city for the dead whose grand designs reach skyward for eternity. The mid-morning bustle of Memphis, c. 2500 BC, reveals a quieter revolution as scribes, brushes poised, shape the arteries of Egypt's first great bureaucracy on sheets of fresh-cut papyrus. In storerooms and shaded porticos, they tabulate grain yields, record conscription quotas, map out land boundaries, and tally tribute from 42 nomes. Each calculation flows in cursive hieratic script, adapted from sacred hieroglyphs, enabling rapid notes on everything from wheat bushels, sometimes upwards of 90,000 annually collected by the crown, to the distribution of temple rations. With papyrus rolls stacked in reed baskets, officials in the vizier's court orchestrate the workings of the realm. Teams of assessors tour the provinces every flood season, weighing output and recording disputes between landowners. By mid-Old Kingdom, administrative titles proliferate: overseer of the granaries, chief scribe of recruits, inspector of accounts, each conferring both state authority and personal prestige. Tax lists, legal contracts, census tables, and temple ledgers written on papyrus circulate between cities, creating an invisible but binding web of control that stretches from northern delta to the southern cataracts. State bureaucracy codifies law and enshrines social order. Royal decrees, etched first on limestone, then transcribed onto papyrus, define property rights, labor obligations, and legal appeals, while copies are filed with local scribes for reference. In court, contracts penned by scribes settle inheritance claims, water usage, and even criminal cases. In temple precincts, rolls inscribed with hymns and rubrics coordinate ritual cycles and priestly duties, binding spiritual and earthly realms in the same administrative hand. The rise of papyrus record-keeping does more than enable sprawling bureaucracy. It fuels Egypt's first historical consciousness. Annals preserve royal lines, significant building projects, bountiful harvest years, and even omens, etching memory and myth into a living archive. From quiet backrooms to the echoing halls of state, papyrus becomes both tool and symbol for Egyptian order, foresight, and enduring legacy. At river's edge, near Elephantine, c. 2500 BC, villagers and farmers scan the muddy waters as the life-giving Nile begins its annual rise, an event on which all Egyptian survival will depend. The inundation, typically cresting in late July, floods fields along both banks, depositing dark, silty loam that shapes planting and harvest cycles from Memphis to Thebes. If the river swells too low, disaster looms. A poor inundation means cracked mud, meager barley, and widespread hunger, while a bountiful flood secures food for temples, palaces, and the common people. State surveyors and local elders measure the flood's height using nilometers, chiseled pillars marking the water's advance, and report totals daily to Memphis. Granaries track state revenue as yields move from sowing to reaping. A single bumper harvest might yield over 300,000 tons of grain across the core nomes, enough to provision officials, soldiers, temple priests, and the tens of thousands of pyramid laborers. Timing is everything. Wheat goes to ground just as the flood recedes in late October, and villagers rush to weed, irrigate, and ward off hungry birds with flapping palm branches and noisy clappers. Families measure success not only by the full bins in their storerooms, but by the king's ability to orchestrate irrigation works and redistribute plenty during bad years. Famine always lurks at the edges of Egyptian plenty. Official correspondence found at Old Kingdom sites records hardship during flood failures, granaries running dry, villages abandoned, deaths recorded by court scribes. In peak years, however, abundance funnels through state-run granaries and markets. Corn, dates, and pulses counted and moved by the basket load to secure both city and countryside. Dikes and canals, built and maintained during lean seasons, shepherd water to distant corners, blunting the cruelty of drought. Even the divinest kings are judged by their stewardship of the flood. Osiris's blessings weighed against the record of hunger or harvest. Across the length of the Nile, the cycle, anticipation, flood, planting, harvest, and reckoning, beats at the civilization's heart. For rich and poor alike, the river's caprice demands vigilance, ingenuity, and faith, linking every Egyptian by necessity to royal management and cosmic fate. Fog clings to the edges of the Nile's many branches, c. 2450 BC, as regional nobles, known as nomarchs, assert their power far beyond Memphis's watchful gaze. Egypt, divided into more than 40 administrative nomes, relies on these provincial governors to oversee tax collection, justice, conscription, and local defense. Early on, the pharaoh's word is law. Yet with swelling prosperity and the rise of local elite families, the nomarchs' tombs grow ever grander, their authority marked by sprawling mud-brick mastabas carved with vivid biographies and feast scenes. The core of these provinces pulses with independent energy. At sites like Asyut and Hierakonpolis, the local lord commands a personal militia, oversees great agricultural estates, and hosts seasonal festivals that rival those of the capital. Royal patronage ensures lavish rewards. Scarab jewelry, imported cedar coffins, or gilded statues flow to loyal households. But some nomarchs carve their own hereditary line, handing titles from father to son while proclaiming their unique prowess and piety in hieroglyphic inscriptions. The funerary stelae from these districts capture vivid details, tallying fields, tallying cattle, and listing both achievements and rivals. Conflict inevitably simmers as Egypt's center and periphery negotiate power. In prosperous times, Memphis co-opts able local leaders to reinforce policies, assign labor, and mobilize aid during poor flooding years. But with every successful harvest, provincial wealth and confidence grow. Some nomes, like the oryx and crocodile, become nearly autonomous, their lords building private chapels, marshalling gangs to compete in royal building projects, or even challenging royal taxation. By c. 2300 BC, rumblings of discontent can be read in tomb texts and king's decrees, presaging the beginning of political fissures within the kingdom's seemingly unbreakable foundations. The regional dynamism of nomarchs is both lifeblood and looming risk for Old Kingdom Egypt. Their self-built tombs and public works echo with community pride, yet their ambitions foreshadow the gradual breakdown of centralized royal power. In balance or in rivalry, these provincial strongmen shape the destinies of cities, harvests, and ultimately, the whole two lands. As the midday sun beats down on the Nile Valley, c. 2450 BC, life unfolds in villages buzzing with daily industry, laughter, and toil. Farmers rise before dawn, gathering sickles made from flint and wooden handles to reap rows of barley and emmer wheat, grains weighing up to 80 kilograms per household in peak harvests. Along the riverbank, fishermen cast weighted flax nets and set reed traps by the dozen, hauling in Nile perch and catfish to dry for market. Potters, kneeling at slow-turning wheels, mold jars and amphorae from fine alluvial clay, each stamped with the marks of their family or workshop. The pace of village life pulses with rhythm and variety. Women grind grain at mortar stones, their hands dusted in flour as they sing work songs and mind small children scrambling at their feet. Weavers sit at low looms, pulling threads from homegrown flax, while basket makers shape reed and palm fronds into sturdy tools for transport and storage. At midday, laborers return from the fields, gathering under simple reed awnings to share flatbread, beer, figs, and roast goose. Animals roam through narrow lanes, cattle plowing, goats browsing dry grasses, donkeys groaning under the weight of barley bales or bundles of firewood. Children join the activity early. Boys herd geese in dusty courtyards or chase mud bricks down irrigation ditches, while girls fetch water with clay jars or help their mothers in kitchen gardens. Festivals mark the seasons. Cattle led through the village to honor fertility gods, women weaving festival crowns of papyrus and lotus. Simple joys punctuate the year, games of senet, songs at sunset, and the scent of incense drifting from family altars. Even in times of hard work, life stretches out in layers of comfort and kinship. Social hierarchies define roles but leave space for neighborly bonds, and the river binds together settlements in a web of shared ritual and reliance. Through these countless daily acts, the true strength of Egypt's Old Kingdom breathes, not just in monuments of stone, but in the warm, constant pulse of its people by the Nile. Golden light flickers through Karnak temple halls, ca. 2400 BC, as priests and villagers gather to mark the sacred cycles of Egyptian religion and ritual. The world's rhythms, sunrise, flooding, planting, dying, are understood as acts of the gods, each year echoing the primordial struggle between order and chaos. Worship centers on Osiris, god of death and rebirth, whose own myth mirrors the passage from harvest decay through winter to green renewal. His temples hum with the offerings of grain bread, sweet beer, and perfumed oil. At dawn, sun priests ascend to sanctuaries atop temple roofs, raising their arms to greet the sun bark of Ra as it appears over the eastern horizon. Hymns call out to the sky. Ra, sail across the heavens, defend us from night. The sun's daily passage links king and cosmos, reaffirmed in festivals like the Opet and Sed, which reenact creation, kingship, and cosmic victory through processions and complex dance. Each ritual movement is scripted, from the lighting of incense to the recitation of ancient spells that would later fill the pyramid texts. Rituals infuse both life and death. Births are hedged with protective charms. Deaths are soothed by prayers, amulets, and careful mummification. In homes, small household shrines house clay figurines and painted stelae to channel the favor of household gods like Bees and Taweret. Villagers write petitions, sometimes scratched on pot shards, asking for rain, health, or safe childbirth. Through all of it, the king acts as the ultimate high priest, mediating between people and divine to keep Mat, the balance of all things, firmly in place. Belief in the afterlife permeates even the humblest act. Funerals launch the soul toward Osiris's judgment, with the Book of the Dead's earliest spells whispered over the dead. Fields and granaries pulse with religious festival days. Temples and shrines, richly painted and filled with the scent of incense, frame every life, guiding Old Kingdom Egyptians from cradle to tomb in a river of sacred recurring time. Beneath the watchful eye of desert cliffs, c. 2400 BC, a convoy of boats laden with Nubian gold, obsidian, and elephant ivory glides north toward Memphis, illustrating the deep roots of Egyptian trade networks. While the Nile serves as Egypt's main artery, over 1,000 kilometers of navigable water, overland routes radiate outward from the river, threading through Sinai's turquoise mines and deep into the Levant for prized cedar wood. The royal economy hums with foreign exchange. Papyri from this period record shipments of incense and aromatic gum from Punt, rare minerals from the eastern desert, and copper ingots traded for Egyptian linen and manufactured goods. The logistics of trade are remarkable. At Abu Simbel, donkey caravans led by seasoned herders haul Nubian gold and cattle along dusty tracks, each caravan accompanied by scribes tallying every hide and sack. In the north, boats fitted with square sails transport bulk goods, sometimes upwards of 30 tons a trip, downriver past customs posts and bustling wharves at Memphis and Heracleopolis. Cedar from Byblos arrives lashed together in towering rafts, its wood used for shipbuilding, ornate coffins, and pyramid roofing, while lapis lazuli amulets from Afghanistan glimmer on the wrists of elite children. Egypt's reach and demand make its kings legendary patrons across the ancient world. Trade touches every level of society. Peasant potters copy Canaanite jar shapes for local beer, and craftsmen in the Delta fashion bracelets with bits of turquoise and shell. Officials at the borders enforce state monopolies, demanding tribute from Nubian chieftains or exacting a toll in copper and cattle on Levantine merchants. Tribute scenes carved in royal tombs glorify Egyptian supremacy. Rows of foreigners bow with gifts, their costumes and animals carefully rendered in bright pigment. Yet true commerce flows both ways, oldest seeds of globalization flowering in the Old Kingdom's shadow. Through these webs of exchange, Egypt grows richer in material and myth. From the flow of obsidian blades to the scent of imported resin, every transaction links the Nile's green promise to distant horizons, weaving Egypt's destiny into the larger story of ancient Afro-Eurasia. Under the pale flicker of oil lamps in palace workshops c. 2370 BC, Egypt's Old Kingdom artisans mold, carve, and paint masterpieces that will define a civilization's face for ages to come. In the shadow of the pyramids, sculptors chisel lifelike statues of pharaohs and dignitaries from limestone, alabaster, and star-speckled diorite, their serene gazes and stiff, formal poses a visual signature for Egyptian eternity. Some statues reach over 3 meters in height. Others, delicate scribal miniatures just 20 centimeters tall, capture the dignity of literate elites and immortalize their role in temple and household alike. Artists and craftspeople forge prestige objects from raw materials funneled by the kingdom's trade. Intricate jewelry gleams in gold, carnelian, and faience. Broad Usik collars, falcon amulets, and beadwork woven into linen ceremonial robes. Potters score handles and paint swirling motifs on water jars, while furniture makers cut, shape, and inlay chairs and headrests with imported ebony and ivory. The palace at Memphis boasts painted floors and ceilings, blue as the sacred night sky, and walls inlaid with scenes of harvest, festival, and royal triumph. Perhaps most enduring are Egypt's earliest experiments in literature. Scribes, masters of ink and brush, compose instructions, wisdom texts inscribed on ostraca and limestone flakes, passing advice from father to son about honesty, thrift, and respect for rank. The teaching of Ptahhotep, best preserved from later copies, traces its origins to Old Kingdom courts, establishing a tradition of didactic prose that echoes for centuries. Funeral stelae, prayers, and even estate law appear in written form, transforming speech into authority and memory. We see it all in the surviving artifacts: a schist cosmetic palette shaped like a fish, the sinuous lines of hieroglyphs on pottery, lapis-inlaid scarabs, or the poised grace of Rahotep and Nofret's painted eyes. From grand palaces to the humblest village, arts and crafts of the Old Kingdom bring royal grandeur and private aspiration together, etching Egypt's glory into clay, stone, and the written word. Deep in the dim corridors beneath Unis's pyramid, c. 2350 BC, the oldest sacred texts ever inscribed appear. Egypt's pyramid texts, written in crisp columns of hieroglyphs on cold limestone walls. These spells, numbering over 700 in the earliest versions, are designed to guide the dead pharaoh's soul on its perilous journey through the Duat, helping him defeat chaos and unite with the sun god Ra. For the first time in Egyptian history, royal rebirth is no longer whispered in secret. It becomes a permanent public contract between king, gods, and the afterlife, etched in stone for eternity. The content of these texts is as striking as their execution. Invocations summon divine protectors, repel demons, and guarantee the king's heart will beat forever in the company of the blessed dead. The cannibal hymn rhapsodizes the king's dominion over gods themselves, while other spells focus on resurrection, transformation, and the ascension to the sky as a star. Only pharaohs and a few queens at Saqqara initially received this privilege. Unis's pyramid contains more than 4,000 carved lines across walls, ceilings, and sarcophagus chambers, with glyphs painted deep green for magical potency. Hieroglyphic scribes innovate to fit the new genre. Classic forms are adapted for economy, speed, and clarity in stone cutting, yet the decorative flourish remains, anchoring sacred meaning in the curl of a reed or the spread of a vulture's wings. Additional rituals evolve. Chants are performed in darkness amid incense haze as masons finish their work, ensuring words and spells come alive with spiritual force. Contemporary records detail teams of artisans, scribes, and priests laboring for months on each complex. The pyramid texts echo well beyond tomb walls, shaping funerary practices for millennia. They are copied, expanded, and transformed into coffin texts and the later Book of the Dead, linking every Egyptian's fate to the precedent set by Old Kingdom kings. In the shadow of Unis's pyramid, writing and religion fuse, offering the pharaoh and, in time, all Egyptians, a map to eternity carved sentence by sentence on the bones of the earth. A faded morning sun glances off palace pylons, c. 2278-2184 BC, as Egypt enters the long, uncertain reign of Pepi II, the boy king whose soul will outlast half a century of dynastic hope and struggle. Ascending the throne as a child, Pepi II's record-setting reign, over 90 years, the longest in world history, begins with the kingdom at its apogee, but ends amidst growing crisis, famine, and administrative exhaustion. For decades, royal decrees still summon quarrymen to Aswan, tribute flows from Nubia's goldfields, and provincial temples echo with loyalty oaths. Yet signs of trouble multiply as the king's youth fades. Old loyalists age and die, their succession sparking local rivalries and a slow drift of authority from court to countryside. Letters and petitions from nomarchs reveal disputes over irrigation water, the rise of hereditary offices outside the king's control, and the first hints of famine along the edge of the delta. Drought years, possibly linked to global climate events, parch the land. The annual Nile rise falls short, leading to mounting crop shortfalls in core nomes. Archaeological evidence shows villages shrinking and tombs abandoned, grim markers of hunger and decline. Inside a court ever more isolated from daily realities, Pepi II issues honorary titles and gifts of land to buy allegiance. But each concession, mausoleums for priests, fiefdoms for nobles, new freedoms for local officials, chips away at centralized power built over centuries. Local lords commission lavish tombs, more elaborate than Memphis's, boasting personal statues, stelae, and funerary texts. Meanwhile, reports from further up the Nile record civil unrest, desertion of state workers, and the loss of state monopolies over copper, linen, and fish. By the time Pepi II's funerary procession winds through Memphis, the institution of divine royalty itself wavers. The old king's quest for eternal order instead ushers in uncertainty, a twilight where the roots of greatness wither and Egypt trembles on the verge of collapse. The last breath of the old kingdom lingers in the silent corridors of Pepi II's emptying court. A leaden sky hangs over the floodplain, c. 2180 BC, as the world Egyptians have known begins to unravel. The Nile's flood fails not once, but year after year, plunging the kingdom into a crisis without precedent. Archaeological cores from the riverbed show bands of sand and silt, evidence of catastrophic drought that starves crops and shrivels granaries across 1,000 kilometers of riverbank. Tax rolls collapse as villages wither. Mortality rises in the Delta and Fayum, with some settlements abandoned entirely after harvests yield barely a third of what is required for survival. As hunger and privation gnaw at Egypt's unity, local authorities break free from Memphis's dimming grip. Nomarchs, priests, and headmen take control over food stores, levy their own militias, and dispense justice independent of any higher throne. Court archives document desperate royal decrees seeking renewed allegiance or the loan of grain, offers that increasingly go ignored by distant towns. Granite monument inscriptions, once celebrating kingly bounty, are now defaced or usurped, repurposed by new provincial strongmen eager to record their own triumphs. Starvation's ravages penetrate every level of society. Burials from this period show signs of malnutrition, disrupted funerary rites, and an uptick in illicit tomb robbing as desperate families seek goods for survival. Pyramid temples partially go dark, their storerooms picked clean and priesthoods scattered. In place of the routine order of pharaonic ritual, shrines bear the marks of hurried offerings and local spirits, the old gods invoked in hope of rain or relief. Violence, too, shakes Egypt as the center falters. Records from southern sites like Elephantine suggest armed clashes between local dynasts, while thieves target merchant caravans traveling decayed causeways. The bureaucracy, built upon papyrus and order, phrase, state officials and taxmen vanish from provincial records. By 2170 BC, Egypt is no longer a unified state, but a patchwork of warring enclaves struggling to survive in a world suddenly shrunk by famine and fear. A hush settles over the Nile basin, c. 2160-2055 BC, as the Old Kingdom collapses and Egypt fragments into the turmoil of the First Intermediate Period. Central authority, once embodied in the god-king at Memphis, dissolves as regional dynasties arise, competing kingdoms anchored at Heracleopolis in the north and Thebes in the distant south. Tombs once guarded by spells and offerings are plundered, temples shuttered or desecrated, as communities scramble for protection and resources in a world upended. Archaeological evidence from cemeteries at Saqqara, Abydos, and outside Beni Hassan shows a sharp decline in burial wealth and funerary art. Where hundreds of grave goods once marked noble tombs, plain pit burials now suffice for even affluent families. The autobiographies carved in Middle Egypt record chaos. I kept the hungry alive during the years of want. I gave bread to the orphan, clothes to the naked. Disrupted trade routes and bandit attacks multiply, with once busy causeways lying silent amid stele reporting feuds, sieges, and the taking of hostages. Society reorganizes around local power centers. City walls rise for the first time in generations, and alliances shift with the fortunes of ambitious nomarchs and war chiefs. The priesthood, forced to rely on local largesse, adapts rituals for unstable times. Funerary feasts are held less often, gods worshipped in repurposed village shrines, and temple calendars reduced to simple cycles tethered to uncertain harvests. State-sponsored building halts. Artisans return to producing for household needs, their skills preserved quietly in private homes or family tombs. Yet seeds for Egypt's resurgence are sown in this era of pain and resilience. The experience of decentralization, destruction, and local innovation will, eventually, drive new strategies for reunification as Theban rivals rise. For now, the Old Kingdom's golden century is over. Egypt stands divided, haunted by the memory of gods and kings whose monuments still loom against the desert horizon, veiled by dust and struggle. A crisp sunrise peels back the night at Giza, timeless echoes of CE 2000 BC and centuries beyond, illuminating the enduring legacy left by the builders of the Great Pyramids. Even after the collapse of Old Kingdom authority, the stone monuments, Khufu, Khafre, Menkaura, remain immovable, their gold-tipped peaks shining as powerful symbols to Egyptians across ages. Generations look up at these man-made mountains and see not just tombs, but testaments to a vanished order. A society capable of mustering tens of thousands, mobilizing resources across the Nile's broad swath, and aligning sky and stone with cosmic precision. The legacy of masonry persists everywhere, in technique, in myth, and in memory. Later pharaohs, Middle and New Kingdom dynasts, returned to build near or within the shadow of their ancestors, quarrying old stone, copying pyramid shapes in smaller scale, and reconstructing temples with blueprints first drafted at Saqqara and Giza. Engineering secrets pioneered by the Old Kingdom, ramp systems, alignment by Polaris, corbelled ceilings, become the foundation for future monumental projects, from pharaonic temples to the storied obelisks at Karnak and Luxor. Myths, too, are chiseled into culture. That kingly authority brings Maat, that God and state are inseparable, and that remembrance in stone can last for eternity. Legends take root and pass beyond Egypt's own borders. Stories of pyramid builders fascinate visiting Persians, Greeks, and Romans. Herodotus recounts the feats of Khufu and the trials of laborers 2,000 years after the fact. Egyptians themselves believe the soul endures in the shadow of stone, that to speak the name of the pyramid king is to make him live forever. The unbroken lines of the Old Kingdom's accomplishments, art, engineering, religious order, carry forward the vision of a civilization that once truly aimed to touch the sky. Beneath a desert sun awash in curiosity and wind, c. 450 BC to AD 1822, the ruins of Old Kingdom Egypt begin to draw travelers, scribes, and scholars from distant lands, sparking the birth of Egyptology and a wave of rediscovery. Greek historians such as Herodotus arrive by boat from the Mediterranean, local guides in tow, and pen awestruck tales of pyramids built by Cheops and enigmatic hieroglyphs none can now read. Roman officials commission sculptures, sketch the Sphinx between campaigns, and carry off small treasures to adorn villas from Pompeii to Hadrian's Wall. Centuries pass, and the ancient language of the pharaohs falls silent, buried with their stones. Still, fascination only intensifies after the Arab conquest. Travelers from Baghdad and Damascus journey upriver to marvel at Giza's monuments, sometimes hacking into pyramids in search of mythical treasures. Napoleon's 1798 campaign brings a phalanx of scientists and artists, savants, who draw, measure, and catalog every visible glyph, pillar, and tomb. The Description de l'Egypte fills a shelf with colored plates and maps, birthing the modern science of archaeology. Revelation comes in 1799 when French soldiers uncover a black slab near Rosetta bearing a decree in 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek. By 1822, Jean-François Champollion unravels the code, resurrecting the voices of Old Kingdom kings. Dig teams from Mariette to Petrie probe the sands at Saqqara and Giza, unearthing statues, papyri, tombs, and solar boats unseen for 4,000 years. Egypt's Old Kingdom lives again, not just in stone and artifact, but in the imaginations and scholarship of a world reconnected to the dust and glory of its origins. In crowded classrooms and bustling city blocks AD 1900 present, the Old Kingdom's marvels echo through every facet of modern memory. Museums in Paris, Cairo, London, and New York showcase granite pharaohs and gilded dioramas. Textbooks and documentaries trace young hands across maps of the Nile and the silhouette of Giza's pyramids. Television specials and blockbuster films recast pyramid builders as heroes, rebels, or magicians, transforming academic debates about ramps, workers, and curses into unforgettable tales for global audiences. Egypt's heritage weaves into new generations' everyday lives. In Cairo, city planners align modern roads with ancient causeways, and schools host field trips that set students walking among ruins where kings once walked. Artists, musicians, and novelists reimagine Old Kingdom splendor. Digital reconstructions stream online, pop songs sample ancient rhythms, and hieroglyph tattoo designs wind across forearms from Sao Paulo to Seoul. The Giza Plateau, visited by millions each year, mixes camel rides, local vendors, conservation teams, and the ever-constant wind off the desert, animating the city of the dead into a living monument. Through shifting symbolism and constant reinterpretation, the Old Kingdom maintains its unique grip on the collective imagination. Restoration teams clean blocks last touched by Khufu's men. Tours descend into pyramid passageways, brush reverently over hieroglyphs unchanged for 4,500 years. For locals and visitors alike, gazing up at pyramids, layered with myth, measured by science, offers an unbroken thread to the ancient world. A reminder that dust and glory, order and aspiration are perennial parts of human experience. As twilight falls and a soft breeze stirs sand atop the Giza Plateau, the Old Kingdom's long story settles into memory, where dust and glory entwine. The desert cools and shadows stretch, enveloping the Sphinx and pyramids in quiet as stars emerge over the Nile's slow current. Wind lifts old voices, echoes of masons, scribes, and gardeners whose daily acts once made the kingdom's mighty spine. Time collapses, and the stories of kings and laborers, of floods and harvests, gods and dreams, blend into the warm hush of fading sun. Even now, the legacy endures not just in stone, but in imagination. The monuments, silent for millennia, still claim the horizon with their measured geometry. Every traveler, researcher, or restless dreamer standing here weighs the ambition and beauty of a lost world. For every age, the pyramids teach patience, order, and wonder, proof that human hope can be built block by block, day by day, toward a sky that never quite surrenders its secrets. The night air is scented with legend and memory, each pyramid block holding a silent promise as constellations rise. So, as you close your eyes and drift toward sleep, let the hush of ancient sand and the gentle pulse of the Nile guide your rest. In dreams, pyramid stones gleam beneath flame and moon, wind sighs through lion jaws, and the river's eternal tide carries you home to Egypt's first glory, golden, somber, and forever alive in the dark.